In today's show, Nate Duncan joins the program, and we talk Shaedon Sharpe, Deni Avdija, Donovan Clingan, and the larger Trailblazers outlook, how they go from here to great. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, Nate Duncan of the Dunc'd On Podcast and the greater Dunc'd On Universe is going to join the program, and we're going to talk about the Blazers, Shaedon Sharpe, Deni Avdija, Donovan Clingan, and the outlook for the team moving forward. Let's just get on into it. Joining me now, you know him from the greater Dunc'd On Universe, giving you 6 podcasts a week, something like 15 hours of audio every day, every week of your life, except for the All-Star break. Is Nate Duncan. How you doing, Nate?
Hey, great to be on, man. How are we doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm glad you're making your annual appearance. It's always a treat. I like to get you on after the Blazers don't really do anything at the trade deadline, so we can talk about all the lack of action. It's good stuff. It's good timing. But I want to start here. I know this was you talked about it this week on your show, so I'll point people in the direction of that. But when discussing the Trailblazers, you kind of went in depth and did some film study on Shaedon Sharpe on the Dunc'd On podcast, which will be linked in the show notes for this episode. How if at all has your opinion changed on Sharpe in his fourth season?
Yeah, well, as people will remember, I was very high on Sharpe in the draft, not necessarily because I thought he was a surefire superstar, but there wasn't anyone that I was entirely enamored of in that 2022 draft. And so I thought is the guy who's shown the ability to dribble and shoot and maybe pass a little bit at the lower levels. I thought his shot was going to come around. It looked pretty pure. And of course, he's a nuclear leaper. And so checking back in on him, he's on that contract extension just under the wire, which I thought was a good bet for the Blazers. And I think we could both agree that 30% usage is outside of his skill level right now. He's really been pressed into service with some of the injuries that they've had. It's basically just been him and Deni as creators for most of the season. But when I watched the film on him, I think the thing that stood out to me the most that was concerning, in addition to just the fact that statistically the jumper hasn't quite come along, but it was more just that when there aren't many, if any, matchups where the defense is just really that worried about it. Like, even if he's going up against a guy who's not a great defender, probably going to be a step back. Maybe he could get by the guy a little bit, but he's not an amazing passer in those circumstances. And there just weren't that many times when he's going to be able to generate a shot, no matter who the defender is, that the defense is like, no, we are not okay with giving this up. Obviously in transition or as a cutter, that's an exception to that. But in terms of him having the ball, there are not many circumstances where he's generating a shot that you're just too worried about as a defense. And if we're going to talk about him being a star level offensive player, that needs to change.
Right.
He's not really overpowering guys. His jumper isn't good enough. That shooting over guys is something that the defense is that worried about. They're fine with him getting a contest. And maybe you could say when he gets all the way to the rim, that's something that would be an issue for the defense. But he's able to do that all that often, even when he's going up against an inferior defender one-on-one. So that was kind of my main takeaway. I definitely think there's hope for him to still be a good player, but there isn't that 5-alarm fire aspect that he's creating for the defense.
How much of that do you think is just his handle? Like, he gets, like, most of his dribble moves are a hesitation, get left, kind of get his shoulders past you and use his strength. Like, his athleticism is a lot of balance and strength. How much do you think just having a tighter handle kind of cleans up some of his issues?
I think a little bit, but I think it's more that, I mean, and Deni Avdija is kind of the polar opposite of him, I would say, because Deni, if you have someone on him who can't handle him physically, he's just going to completely abuse that guy when healthy. And he's going to get right to the basket and either score at the rim, get fouled, or make a pass for an open three. And so Shaden doesn't really necessarily have that because he'll use his strength going left sometimes. But again, he's not just getting to a spot using those bump Euro step finishes where he's really knocking guys backward. Doesn't quite have that same type of size as some of these huge creators now who are matchup nightmares like Avdija have. So I think it's more about that, he's not really jumping over guys, right? Because he shoots kind of more of a set shot, even though he has this great leaping ability. And the jumper is not really going in that much. And so it's just, when you think about generating the quality shots, like, yeah, you can get the shot off, right? Like if his handle is that much better, maybe he's a little bit better in pick and roll, but it's so much of it is really about just physicality right now rather than handle with the game, the way the game is called. And so I don't think he's necessarily bringing that aspect. Now, there's not that many shooting guards who are doing that anymore, right?
Right.
Really, the game has really changed in terms of the amount of physicality that's required to truly dominate. And so I think Sharp is bigger than your average point guard. We're seeing point guards are just not necessarily the main guys the way they used to be either. I think in part for that reason.
Yeah, I mean the comp that I think Chauncey Billups pre-arrest used for Shaden was Devin Booker. That's the guy he kind of wanted him to be, and I can see that. Some of it is shot profile, right? It's like he can shoot but doesn't take a ton of threes. But Booker's strength is that's a different level. Like his ability to get and rise up and take shots, and also he's just a better long two maker than Shaden has been. I think that's like that's the. I don't know, probably above 95th percentile comp for him, but I think that's the idea that the organization kind of saw for him in his best light.
That's interesting. That reminds me, as you mentioned that comp, back in very early in Devin Booker's career, I think it was like his first or second year, I talked to someone on the Suns coaching staff, and this was early in the tracking data era, but they had data that showed when Devin Booker posted up, that he basically made more progress towards the rim before shooting, knocked his defender back more than basically any guard was doing. And Shaden Sharp just, again, doesn't have that mentality, doesn't have that level of physicality. And Devin Booker also, he shoots at the top of his jump. He's got a high release. And of course, the ball went in much more as a long two player. He was better at drawing fouls, attacked harder in transition, was a better passer, all of those things. So, I mean, I think the biggest pathway is just that his jumper becomes this massive weapon. And that's probably the biggest thing that you're hoping would have happened by this point. And I'm not saying it can't happen, but usually you would have started to see signs of that by now. And while, I mean, it still looks great coming off his hand, he's
does it ever?
39.6% on long twos for his career and, mid 30s at best on threes. So, that's kind of where I'm at on him right now.
Yeah, I think this is probably the best season of his career, and yet I come away feeling like more certain about what his ceiling is being lower than I had been prior to this. So we're on generally the same page there. Let's talk Deni.
So one thing I can add there too, I think, I mean, I remember, I want to say it was against Detroit, or maybe it was it would have been his second year. Maybe it was against Memphis when they were all injured, but it might have been two games where they were starting in the left corner, bringing him off a pin down, and if the defense went under, he made some threes. It was late in games. He was down at, or then the defense had to go over. He was turning the corner, getting downhill, finishing at the rim, and they just ran that play over and over, Chauncey Billups style, and the other team couldn't stop it. But what made that unstoppable was the fact, number one, he didn't have the ball, right? I mean, they've been using him on the ball so much this year. And then number two, when the defense went under on that wide pin down, he's able to bang that three. And so I do still think that could be very effective if he can really start to make that shot regularly, and it can open up his game where he's more on the move, one or two dribbles, can take off from the dotted line, kind of unimpeded. It's on the ball where you line up the pins and knock him down that it's not the good. I think he could still be effective as an off-ball player, but that, of course, requires that you actually be able to make that shot as a prerequisite.
Yeah, and I think if they played more minutes, and they probably won't this season, so we'll never see it, but just more creators on the court, like more dudes, so they don't have to overtask him with that. He's not going to. There's an outside chance that he plays basically 0 minutes with Scoot Henderson, this season. So it's like, it's with Scoot and Deni and on the court, and maybe a little Drew Holiday, although I think he's looked a little overtasked as a creator over the last few weeks. Maybe that you can have Sharp coming off those pin downs and being a guy who catches it on the move, because he's so much better when he catches it on the move versus when he catches it in a 3-point stance and he's like jab, take a 19-footer.
He also like makes decisions too slowly as well. I would say that's the other thing. It's always going to be a 1-second hold and a jab before he does something. So again, that getting that go and catch type of movement before he attacks would be really useful for him.
You mentioned Deni Avdija. What has stood out to you most about Deni's rise this season? Before we do that, I want to tell you that today's program is brought to you by FanDuel. You ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? Well, FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. So if you're looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. Futures this time of year can make you feel smart, because if you get it right in February, you're going to feel great in June. So pick a team that's going to make the finals, pick a team that's going to win the finals, pick a team to advance out of the first round. There's all types of action on that futures board, and you can visit FanDuel.com to get started and use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for a chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Today's program is also brought to you by your local YMCA. That's the YMCA of Columbia-Willamette, where they want you to find your play, because they believe that everyone deserves their place to play, because play connects us, strengthens us, and brings us closer together as a community. And they got 3 pillars. They're going to help you find your play: youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility. The Y is your local nonprofit helping people of all ages move, grow, and belong across the Portland and Vancouver metro areas. If you're looking for a local YMCA, well, you're going to find 6 courts and a full fitness center at the Beaverton Family Y. You're going to find families swimming and playing pickleball together at the Clark County and Sherwood YMCAs, family activities all year long, brand new workout equipment at all 3 branches, and so much more. And with YMCA camps, childcare, and enrichment sites throughout the region, the Y gives kids safe and fun spaces to learn, play, and build confidence all year long. I am a child of YMCA camps. I am an adult who is a member of my local YMCA. I am finding my play, and so can you at the Y. Just visit ymcacw.org/pod. That's ymcacw.org/pod, or follow them on YouTube and Instagram at YMCACW. All right. Thanks for making this show your first listen. If you're living that everyday lifestyle, why not go join the Everydayer Club, where you can chat with me in our members-only Discord server, and you get ad-free audio. You get the audio version of this podcast without the interruptions. $5 a month, $50 a year. The show notes got a link for you right there. It's locked on blazers.supercast.com to learn more. Okay, here's the rest of my conversation with Nate Duncan. You mentioned Deni Avdija. What has stood out to you most about Deni's rise this season?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that stood out to me is just that teams have not been able to stop him. And that's even the case when the Blazers had nobody else who could do anything and nobody else who could shoot. Certainly seeing it in person, what he did to Golden State, the second game that I think those 2 teams played, but it was in Golden State, where they just couldn't deal with him. And they'd even try to deny him the ball on the floor. He got a couple of back doors. They could run pick and roll at a smaller player. His handle was good enough. Tiago Splitter said afterwards, everyone thinks that you'll stop him by not letting him get right. Well, hey, guess what? He got right again, right? And then, so I think that's a big part of it. That's really been impressive to me, is just that, once he gets downhill, he's got that really super slow step game. He's really strong. And there might be one guy on the other team that could guard him, 2 guys on the other team that could guard him, but then there's this thing called a pick and roll, either at a smaller player or a bigger player. And I mean, probably your best option would be trapping him, but teams even try that, but then he's pretty savvy to get the ball back in those circumstances too against a scrambled defense at the end of games. He also has just made himself into a really good alley-oop passer. I mean, I had never thought that anyone could make Donovan Clingan an effective alley-oop finisher, and Deni Avdija has actually managed to do that by putting the ball basically, 2 centimeters away from the rim on those alley-oops. So he's been effective there. And certainly when they load up on him, is passing not only to guys at the rim, but also three-point shooters good. And then the other aspect that's critical too, I was wrong when I felt that he wouldn't be someone you would give the ball to all the time. But if he's not going to be that, obviously somebody is going to have the ball other than him at times. He at least is able to make 3-point shots on spot ups now, where if other guys are creating it. He's not very good at shooting the ball off the dribble, but he just hasn't really needed to be, because he's just so big and strong. If you go under on him, well, okay, but now he's at the foul line with the head of steam. You're not getting back in front of him and stopping him. He'll do like that bump euro, and he's got a easy floater. He's going to get fouled, or he's got to pass it in that circumstance. So the fact that he doesn't shoot the 3 off the dribble hasn't been that big of a problem. But then at least when he's off the ball, he's been able to make shots as well, which is another big question mark about him. So, I mean, obviously he's been a revelation, deserved All-Star in the All-NBA conversation before this bout of back injuries. And Danny and I, when we did our best contracts in the NBA, we ranked him number 1.
Okay, let's go right there then. This is a take inspired by you. I don't think I agreed with your version of this take, but it did make me think about basketball better, which is perhaps why I enjoyed the Dunc'd On world, where I'm like, Nate's wrong about this, but it is an interesting way to think about things. You said in an episode with you and John on Hollinger and Duncan that or Duncan and Hollinger, but you said that this year is the best year of the Cade Cunningham era, that the Pistons will have a chance to make the finals. I believe that was the take, something to that effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I, tweaking it a little bit, maybe I'm a bigger believer in the Pistons than you, but I think the next 2 seasons are the Blazers' best chance to be really good with Deni Avdija, basically before his money kicks in, because he's going to get super paid. Is the clock? Am I right to think the clock is ticking that quickly that like you better do it quick before you have to pay Deni Avdija what he's worth?
Well, it might have been their best chance to be really good with Deni Avdija.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that they can. They decided to pay. They decided to acquire Drew Holiday and kind of make it a little more challenging. And they still have Jeremy Grant, and they're going to have to pay Scoot Henderson. And it's like I don't think they can. But is it like, have they missed the boat? Am I overreacting there?
Well, I mean, I guess you still would have the option of maybe trading Jeremy Grant if you attach some of these assets that they have, all these Milwaukee picks, to try to bring in one more star. Like, I think it could have been, like, should they have been in the mix for Jaren Jackson Jr.? Like, that would have been I think he would have been a pretty interesting fit.
Yeah,
with these guys. And given what he's making right now, Jeremy Grant could have been a matching salary. Now they would have had to throw in a little bit extra for the 2 years remaining on Jeremy Grant's contract at this point in time. And I don't know if the picks that they have, those Milwaukee picks, are those juicier than, they got that Orlando first in 2028 as well. We don't need to go through everything they have. I'm sure Blazers fans know what that is, but if they wanted to dump all those in, would that have exceeded the Utah Jazz offer? Would that have been worth it? It's an interesting question. Because it's funny. I mean, they went for it in a sense of both not trading Jeremy Grant when maybe they could have, and then also trading for Drew Holiday and taking on 2 extra years of his money. That's way more than Simons was making. So they went for it in that sense of trying to take a step forward, but they didn't go for it in a way that was actually going to like really make them contenders. But as good as Deni has been, you still think that they probably need to truly contend a player better than him, or you just think they're probably going to be more in the route of trying to be, a consistent threat for home court advantage in the West and maybe not a championship contender. And then you go with the Avdija plus depth approach there instead. But they do have trade assets. I mean, the other thing you could say, though, is maybe that their best chance to win in the Avdija era is in 4 or 5 years if one of those picks from Milwaukee ends up being, a really high draft pick and they get another star in.
Yeah, and if they make the playoffs this year, which seems suddenly a lot less likely because of Deni's injury and Sharp's injury and just their sort of situation. But if they were to make the playoffs this year and get rid of that, the Larry Nance hubris trade debt that they owe to the Chicago Bulls, then they would also be able to trade their picks. Like they'd all of a sudden have a lot of ammo this summer to be, at least draft pick wise. I don't think they have a lot of tradable assets unless they really want to get off of Sharp or Scoot, but like a lot of draft capital to kind of get into the mix and make a swing for someone. So I maybe they gotta. I mean, I think Cronin has done his best work in the trade market, trading for Deni Avdija, trading for Toumani Camara. That's where he's done well. So perhaps they'll be lined up to do exactly that again. I don't think he's done his best work in the negotiation market until this fall. He did pretty well with Toumani Camara and Shaden Sharp for sure.
I mean, that's the interesting thing too. I had Kamara as my number 5 best contract in the NBA going forward, of basically having him for $20 million a year through his prime years. Not obviously as good as the Avdija contract. The Avdija contract might be the best contract that we've seen in the last 15 years, frankly.
It's got to be Steph Curry on the $44 million contract.
Well, I mean, I guess so. Like that one, it's tough to say because Steph Curry, was probably $100 million player on that contract.
Right. I guess there are max contracts. Right. There are max contracts.
Right.
That's fair.
But that contract was also, probably 80% of the max, and Deni's is 25% of the max. Right. So there's a big difference there. I mean, I can't remember the last guy who was on a second contract making 25% of the max who would have been like in all NBA consideration. Like that's, I was trying to think about that today when I did that show. I couldn't even come up with anybody.
Today's show is brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed, Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping that the right candidate stumbles across your post. You can spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. And here's the stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching, more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. And listeners of this show will get $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support my show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. All right, still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. Here's the rest of my conversation with Nate Duncan. Is Deni a flight risk enough that it makes sense to clear the books to make sure you can renegotiate and extend? Like, does that matter? Or do you just say, hey, we're going to pay you when you get to free agency, so let's, should they prioritize that in some way?
Only they and he can know the answer to that. And I think some of it depends on, so as of right now, they basically would not have cap space that summer of 2027. If you're going to bring back Scoot,
right?
Lillard has a player option, Grant has a player option, Holiday has a player option. You probably would need to trade away one of those guys, not re-sign Scoot. There would be some pain involved in that for sure. But also, it's tough if you're not really a contender. Right, it's one thing to go to Deni Avdija and be like, "Hey, you've got this really low salary, and because of that, we can bring in all these awesome guys using cap space. Let's do that. Let's be a contender, and then we'll obviously give you the 5-year deal instead of the 4-year extension. Maybe you can sell that if it's just like, hey, well, these guys here are pretty expensive. They're not really that good." So can you just wait a year for us because that'll cost us some money? Like that's not really, or we would have to give up a middling first to get off of Jeremy Grant's salary in the last year of his deal. Or we affirmatively made this trade for Drew Holiday that used all this up and he's 37 now. That's not, you don't feel great about that, right? And I think Portland, unfortunately, unless some things change, like they're probably going to just be in kind of in the middle of the West. And if you do let him get to free agency in the summer of 2028, it's quite possible that there would be another team that would be a better situation for him to win. And, I'm sure there are other markets that would possibly come calling. So you may just feel like, a lot of it would depend on what's available in terms of the free agent market in 2028, seeing that a year out. But it would be tough. I would not feel totally confident in it. And I would probably want to make sure that I could renegotiate and extend him. And really what they would need is probably about $20 million in cap space to even begin to get him to do that, I would imagine. The other reason to do that, though, is you could probably get him on less than the max going forward as well, because you're offering him $20 million in new money. You can kind of subtract that out of what his future contract would be. That's what Jaren Jackson Jr., Larry Markkinen, like those
Larry
deals,
did, yeah.
Were now maybe they could even get a better haircut than that if they could pay him more in the first year. So that would be another reason to do that. But it certainly is going to take. It's going to be a situation that they're going to have a lot of finesse with, I would say.
Yeah, they kind of walked down this path by being very expensive. Basically in the entire post Dame and then the Dame 2.0 era, they've never been a team that was particularly cheap. It's kind of incredible that they have always maintained a fairly expensive payroll never operated as a cap space team. It is a bit of a surprise. The other guy I want to ask you about, Donovan Clingan. I think he has emerged as like a legitimate above average starting center in the league. You're better at the player ranking stuff than me. I know this is something you are more on top of, but what have you appreciated about year two Donovan Clingan, or what have you noticed about year two Donovan Clingan?
Yeah, I think his finishing has certainly improved, and part of that has been with help from Deni Avdija. Last year he was really inefficient, and he still is somewhat inefficient for a center, because a lot of that is just that when he gets the ball underneath and it's a non-dunk or it's an offensive rebound, he's going to kind of lean into guys. He's going to throw it off the backboard. He's going to get stripped down low a little bit as well. So, but he's not just like comically inefficient for a center anymore. The 3-point shooting, I didn't have a ton of hope for it. He's been taking a few of them, making a few of them, but he's got one of the highest 3-point shot qualities in the league, basically absolutely as high as you possibly could. 79% of his threes are uncontested. 38% is what we'd expect him to shoot on those. And considering that he almost never shoots from the corners, that's about as high as a shot quality as you can have. And he's shooting 5.6 percentage points worse than would have been expected on 3-pointers. But he's taken enough of them now where it's not ridiculous to think that he could take a few. The other problem, though, there is, like, he could take it if you straight up don't guard him, but he's not really going to take pick and pops. And then if you close him out, he's not going to drive to the basket and do anything either if you run him off the line. So it's still of somewhat limited utility, just trail 3, or he sets a screen, someone drives him to the basket, he doesn't roll the basket, they throw it way out to him, something along those lines. Or maybe he hands off to someone, that guy drives and then throws it back out to him on occasion. But I think that's kind of more of a party trick. Still want to see him get a little bit better as a screener, better hands, but he's been, and the offensive rebounding is a weapon. So certainly I think someone who will be a starting center, although someone, if they got into a playoff series where kind of Rudy Gobert style, it maybe could be a limitation for him offensively.
Yeah, even this year, I dug into this a little bit on their defense has just been way worse than I thought it would be. Some of that is maybe that I underestimated what a quality of coach Chauncey Billups was, which is a thing that I thought I would never say on this podcast, but here we are. But they've really fallen off, and teams have really started to launch threes when he's in the game. That seems to be what they've said. Hey, he's going to play and drop. Let's walk into 3-pointers, and he's still a great rim deterrent. Like, they're not shooting, they're not getting shots at the rim. That remains a strength, but teams are just shooting way more threes with him on the court. And then just in general, they haven't protected the rim as well this year. I don't think Clingan has been like way worse to my eyes on defense. I know you guys have some proprietary rim protecting stats over there at Dunc'd On. Is he still up there among the very good ones, or is he slipped a little bit sort to match the eye test?
Yeah, it's still pretty high. So we keep a number of stats. One of those is contest percentage. So what percentage of opponent shots within 5 feet does the player contest? 41% is what he's at. That's one of the highest numbers in the league. I think it might actually be the highest, other than unless you're going to count Dylan Cardwell as a series contender. He's interesting, but so he's basically the highest among any center at this point in time, other than Alex Sarr. Alex Sarr is at 43% among guys that you consider really solid rim protectors. So that's pretty good. Opponents shooting 57%. That is not an elite number.
Right. Yeah.
When he challenges, that's maybe a little bit below average, or I'm sorry, a little bit below the positional average. So better than the positional average. And then the biggest component of his statistical resume is that opponents only take 27.4 shots per 100 possessions at the rim when he's in the game. And the overall opponent field goal shooting at the rim when he's in the game is, it's solid for a rim protector, but not unbelievable. That's at 62%. So ultimately, we still have him solidly in the top 10 as a rim protector. But of course, there are other components to defense as well in that regard. But yeah, he definitely is still a major presence around the basket, to be sure.
Yeah, I think I think the coaching staff is actually trying to get him out of that drop and play up higher, and they're getting frustrated with him not trying to contest, not getting out to contest shots on the perimeter.
Well, it's interesting because he has such a high standing reach. He can surprise jump shooters with that contest if he does get out there. But, I think also just the number of minutes that he needs to play as well. Like that was something that he didn't do that much in college. He's been healthier and played a lot more minutes than I thought he would be able to early in his career, but he is someone I think who can wear down.
Yeah. His conditioning that's probably the biggest change in his year 1 to year 2 is that he can play 28 minutes. Like he can and last year he could play a cool 17 before he was holding his shorts, and then be like, all right, well, we probably got to get him out of there because he's going to commit a bunch of fouls and like it's starting to get rough. What do the Blazers do from here? Like, I think they're not a bad basketball team. And I don't want to paint them as such, although, but like, what is their best path to improvement without, as we said, like a bunch of tradable assets that aren't just draft picks? Where do you see them sort of being able to finesse this to get better in the near term? And should they be a team that is really trying to go for it?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. The top of the West is quite brutal going for it. And you just have these monsters who are going to be there for the next 5 seasons. So I don't really see it as, oh, well, let's just wait out Oklahoma City and San Antonio. Like, that's probably not going to happen. I think you just have to try to make the best team that you can at this point. They have too much talent to get a high draft pick.
Right.
Of course, they have that obligation outstanding to Chicago over the next couple of years as well. And it also is worth noting, though, that if they are going to swap with Milwaukee in 2028, they have to have a pick to swap. And so extinguishing that obligation, making the playoffs in one of the next 2 years, it would be pretty useful for them. So because that pick is lotto protected. Yeah, again, I'm thinking about it. Is Damian Lillard going to come back and like help them next year? Like that might be kind of interesting. Obviously it's a good story, but he'll be 36 next year, coming off a torn Achilles. So he'll always be able to shoot, but he'll be maybe the worst defensive player in basketball. Maybe he was even that before he tore the Achilles. Hopefully he'll play a little bit less of a role. Scoot Henderson is still only 22. Right, like Shaden Sharp is not even 23 yet. Clingan is not even 22 yet. So, and Avdija is only 25. So I think you just try to continue to build around this group, get some more shooting. I liked the Vic Krejci addition. I thought was excellent for them. I think like as having a shooting guard off the bench, if you're not making shots, who could maybe close as well at times would be really useful. So So I just wish, and Kamara, I think, can continue to get better. So that's a pretty good young core. I think you just got to kind of roll with that. And, you do have $70 million in Holiday and Grant sitting on the books, which is just, kind of the weird part of all this.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too, is that I think they do have this interesting young core. We just haven't seen it. Like, and I think that's kind of the hard part of my evaluation.
Yeah,
here.
that's the other part too, right?
Yeah, we just haven't seen it. So I don't know what a Scoot and Shaedon Sharpe and Deni Avdija trio looks like with Toumani Camara and Donovan Clingan. And certainly they played together last year a fair amount, but they not when Deni had made sort of this rise and where he was really comfortable being an on-ball guy, and then where to Scoot
and also not at a point where everyone else knew that he was the guy either.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. When you're game planning for him and worried about him and trying to, jump his right hand and send him left and all those things. And
and even the guys on his own team, right? Like I'm sure.
Oh, sure.
At this point last year, Scoot Henderson and Shaden Sharp thought that they were going to be the Deni Avdija of this team. And now I think it's pretty clear that Deni Avdija is the Deni Avdija.
Yeah. There's something to be said for the clarity of that. Like they know what the deal is. But they just, how the rest of the parts fit is a little bit dicey. Nate, thank you so much for your time. We always appreciate it. Where would you like to point people if they're looking for the 15 hours of podcasting you do every single week?
That might be a little bit of an overstatement, but if you want to check out our free episodes, you can search Dunc'd On in your podcast player. You could check out our YouTube at Nate Duncan as well. We do something called Clutch Calls, where Danny and I do a lot of alternate broadcasts on NBA League Pass. We also bring that to the end of close games on YouTube a couple times a week as well. We'll actually probably end up doing every close playoff game. So that'll be something that if you miss the game, you want to get the excitement, but also get some really hardcore analysis about why it happened as you're watching the excitement at the end of the game. That's a product that we're going to be putting out there in the playoffs. So you can check me out on YouTube. I'm sure Mike will be kind enough to put that link in the show notes.
It's in the show notes. It's already in there. Yeah. Listen, if you just make John record for an extra hour each week, you could get to 15 hours a week, Nate. I believe in you. You just got to bully him a little bit. Dear listeners, come back for more shows later this week. The Trailblazers play the Timberwolves this evening, and we'll recap everything that happens in that one. It's what we do 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, also on YouTube. I appreciate you listening. I will talk to you soon.